Okay, obviously as promised, I show you guys how you can create your own gun game, and it's not that hard at all. Trust me guys, it's if you figured out how it works and how you have to set up the classes, it's super simple. And it's a little bit tedious to make it for a lot of players, but if you're just creating this for a group of friends, like 4 or something, it is completely possible and not overwhelming. That's the word, yes. And yeah, let's start off. We need 3 things, and these 3 things are new to the game, which is the Okay, I have to stop myself here because I apparently cannot read patch notes. And there is a device which is called Team Settings and Inventory, which is in Fortnite for a very long time. And I actually got a setting where you can set up sending a channel if you eliminate someone. Basically, everything I say from now on about the perception trigger, you can just replace it with the team setting and inventory device, because that is a lot easier than placing hundreds of perception triggers around the map. You can simply set the same channels as you would do in the perception triggers, just set the one channel in the team and inventory settings, obviously make it as the same team as it would be with the perception triggers, and it basically works the same. You can still use the perception triggers, but it's a lot easier with the team settings and inventory device. So I want to make that clear. So yeah, let's move on. Perception trigger, the item granter, and the attribute trigger. For the item granter, you could also use the class system thing, but it's easier with the item granter. So I don't know why you would use that. Maybe to create like hero classes or something, but I would use the item granter for your first one. So you also need the perception trigger. This one is a super helpful tool, and this is basically the only reason why it's possible to make a gun game. And the last one is the perception trigger. That one tracks actually all the kills that you make and score whatever you want to use. And it's super helpful. You could technically also use the normal triggers on placing on the floor or something. But that would be a lot of work. It's messy, and just use the perception triggers. So first of all, I'll show you guys how it works. If we start a game, we can see that the perception trigger is going to track me. So wherever I'm going in a 360 circle, whatever, it tracks me and it tracks what I'm doing. If I, for example, would collect that coin, I would have a score of 1, and that perception trigger would give that signal over to our attribute trigger. And as you can see, if I'm going to move a little bit, it says error. That means the attributes in the trigger are not valid. So if I collect the coin now, you can see that it would take a little bit, by the way. So because I only have 1 of the perception triggers, the more perception triggers you have, the better is the tracking, you can say. So if I'm going to collect that coin, you can see that I switched to my Desert Eagle, which I selected in the item granter. And you can also see that if I'm turning around a little bit, now the channel has changed to the green light, which is all of the attributes are valid. And that gives us the gun. So now that you know how the magic works, I'll show you guys what you need to set up. So starting off with the first one, the perception trigger, very important in here that you set up teams for them. And you have to place for each team a different perception trigger. So that means if I am in team 1 and I want to have 2 teams, then I need to place another one, which is called team 2. That is very important, otherwise you will have problems with the tracking and it kind of gets messy, and this whole thing is still a little bit glitchy. So definitely make sure that you have perception triggers for each team. So the next thing that you want to do is disable everything that has to do with visibility, VFX, or sound effects, because you obviously do not want to have red glowing lights around your players all the time. So that's not, very helpful in most games. Otherwise you want to have that kind of look. But for everyone else, just turn that off. So disable that. And then the only important stuff that you now need to do is you basically have to give a main channel for obviously every team needs their own channel. So if you are team 2, you cannot use the same channel as in team 1. So I have channel 2 for this one, and you basically have to give all these 4 options a channel. Basically, you could also just use the first 2, but then you will not have that instant snap of a reaction maybe. So there's possibilities that the tracking is not that instant. So the more you select, the better it is, basically. So the next thing that you want to do is you want to set up your attribute trigger. And in here, you obviously also have to create for each team a new one. So for team 1, team 2, whatever, you have to set up the teams in here. That's very important. And then you want to set up what you want to track. Obviously, I just used the score one because I have no friend which I can kill. So, but if you want to create an extra gun game where you have to kill players, you obviously have to use the score one, the elimination one over on the top. So the next thing that is very important, you can turn the thing off, or you can just basically place it wherever you want so nobody can hear it or see it. And the next thing that is very important is the channel listen to channel. This one has to be the same one as the channels in your perception trigger. So how this is working, the perception trigger is sending the channels over to the attribute trigger. The attribute trigger is checking the channel if all the attributes are okay, if you have a kill or not, or whatever. And then it's saying yes, the attributes are okay, or no, they're not okay. And then you want to send a signal from your attribute trigger to your item granter, which then gives you obviously the gun. So you have to use the same channel in here on the grant item when receiving from. There's one more thing that you need to do, and that is you have to disable the item granter by itself, because otherwise it will constantly give you guns, because you still have the score of 1, and the perception trigger will always track your score, so it still sends out signals. So you have to make sure that the item granter is disabled after you get the gun for the first time. So you basically can use the same channel over here, and that will basically disable itself while giving out the first gun. And that is basically it. You obviously can play around with the settings in here, but you don't need to change anything. Obviously, the receiving player should be also team 1, but you guys probably get that by now. So very important that you make teams, and each team gets their own triggers and all that kind of stuff. And then you basically have to repeat the process over and over again. So I'll quickly show you guys how this would work. So I'm going to copy this one over here. It's team 1. Now that you obviously want to play gun game, obviously we need 2 kills. And then we want to have, if all channels are available, transmit on to a different channel. So I think we can just use like 6 or something. And then we want to copy and paste our item granter over here. Okay, we want to do, oh wait, it's actually copied, so. We want to delete the items out of there, and we want to change this to 6. Then we want to give it a new item. Let's say we give it the gun, and it should work completely fine. And that is basically all you have to do. You have to repeat this process on how many times, on how many guns you want to have. Obviously, if you have a lot of players, you kind of run out of triggers, so keep that in mind. You don't have endless trigger channels. And one more important thing is that you have to place these perception triggers all over your map for all of the teams. But I think I already said that. So that is basically how you create a gun game. And hopefully I was helpful for you guys. Hopefully you can create your own gun games. Obviously, if you have gun games that you already created or that you want to show me, then, you know, write the code in the comments or wherever you're seeing this video. And yeah, I'm seeing you in my next video. Have a great time. Bye.